Antonio Margarito, once a feared welterweight champion, was a fighter who rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most controversial figures in boxing history. With a relentless fighting style and an unbreakable will, he dominated the ring, earning a reputation as the Tijuana Tornado. But what began as a promising career quickly spiraled into scandal, financial ruin, and personal struggles that would define his post-boxing life. Known for his strength, charisma, and aggressive persona, Margarito once ruled the welterweight division, but his fall from grace came with a heavy price. From a career-defining victory to an infamous cheating scandal, Margarito's life outside the ring became a tale of broken dreams, legal battles, and the struggle to reclaim a lost identity. This is the tragic lifestyle of Antonio Margarito, a fighter whose rise and fall are marked by both glory and regret. Margarito's boxing journey began at the age of 6, when he first laced up a pair of gloves. From the start, his aggressive style set him apart from others. He wasn't the fastest or the most technically skilled, but he had an incredible work ethic and an iron chin. His amateur career was marked by a staggering 319-19 record, and it was clear to everyone around him that he had the potential to become a force in the boxing world. By the age of 15, Margarito turned professional, and he quickly gained a reputation as a fearless, relentless fighter. His style was simple but effective. He would take a punch to land one, and he had an uncanny ability to wear down opponents with his high-pressure style. He wasn't flashy, but he was tough. By the time he was in his mid-20s, he was already earning a reputation as one of the toughest welterweights in the world. Despite his lack of natural athleticism, Margarito's determination pushed him to heights few others could reach. His ascent through the ranks of the boxing world was swift, but his unpolished skills meant he often had to rely on pure grit to secure his victories. Margarito's rise to the top came during a time when the welterweight division was stacked with talent, including the likes of Sugar Shane Mosley, Oscar De La Hoya, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. Despite not having the smoothest boxing technique, Margarito's ability to take punishment and keep coming forward earned him respect among boxing fans and experts alike. His first major victory came in 2004 when he defeated Kermit Cintron for the WBO welterweight title. This win marked the beginning of his ascent to the top, and from that moment, Margarito was a name to watch in the sport. In the years that followed, Margarito's reputation as a relentless, hard-hitting fighter grew. His high-pressure style, combined with a sturdy chin and an unwavering will, made him a dangerous opponent in the ring. By 2006, Margarito was earning bigger paydays and higher-profile bouts. In 2008, he faced the highly respected Miguel Cotto, a fighter who was undefeated and considered by many to be one of the best welterweights of his time. Margarito's victory over Cotto was not just a win, it was a statement. He wore down Cotto over 11 grueling rounds, eventually stopping him in the 11th to claim the WBA welterweight title. The fight solidified Margarito's place as one of the top fighters in the sport. His performance was a masterpiece of aggression and endurance, and the boxing world began to take notice of the Tijuana Tornado as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a force of nature, a man who could take punishment and keep on coming. By 2008, he was riding high, considered by many as the future of the welterweight division. But behind the scenes, things were beginning to unravel. The pressures of fame and the weight of the expectations began to take their toll, and the cracks in his persona began to show. For all his success, Margarito's greatest challenge was yet to come, and it would not come from a man standing across the ring. Instead, it would come from a scandal that would change his career and his life forever. On January 24, 2009, Antonio Margarito's world came crashing down. In his highly anticipated fight against Shane Mosley, A pre-fight inspection by Mosley's trainer, Nazim Richardson, uncovered a shocking discovery. Margarito's hand wraps were found to have illegal plaster inserts, which could be used to harden his gloves and increase the power of his punches. The discovery led to immediate suspicions of foul play, and Margarito's trainer, Javier Capetillo, was accused of deliberately wrapping his hands with the illegal material. The scandal was a punch to the gut for the boxing world. Margarito, who had built his career on being tough and fearless, was now facing accusations of cheating. His reputation, which had been built on a foundation of toughness and skill, was now crumbling. Boxing fans, analysts, and even fellow fighters were shocked. Margarito had been caught in one of the most egregious acts of dishonesty in the sport's history. The fallout was immediate. Margarito was stripped of his license and banned from boxing for a year by the California State Athletic Commission. He was also ordered to undergo a hearing to determine whether he would be permanently banned from the sport. The scandal cast a shadow over everything he had accomplished. What had once been seen as a warrior's heart was now viewed with suspicion, and many questioned whether he had ever been the fighter they had once admired. In the aftermath of the scandal, Margarito's image was irreparably damaged. When Margarito returned to the ring in 2010, he found himself facing a hostile crowd and a doubting public. His reputation as a fighter was now tainted by the scandal, and his performances were no longer seen as heroic or admirable. In his first fight, back after the suspension, he faced Shane Mosley in a rematch that was meant to be his redemption story. Instead, it was a brutal reminder of the damage the scandal had done to his career. Mosley defeated him in devastating fashion, knocking him out in the 9th round. The loss was a symbolic one, as it wasn't just a defeat in the ring. It was a loss of his identity as a legitimate champion. The gloves scandal would forever overshadow Margarito's career. What had once been a rising star with the potential to become a legend in the sport now became the face of one of boxing's most notorious cheating scandals. The fallout from the gloves scandal sent shockwaves through Antonio Margarito's career. Once hailed as a rising star and a relentless force in the welterweight division, he found himself ostracized by many in the boxing world. The trust that had been built over the years with fans, trainers, and promoters crumbled in an instant. While some still saw Margarito as a fighter who could redeem himself, others viewed him as a cheater whose victories were forever tainted. For the first time in his career, Margarito faced questions not just about his ability, but about his integrity. When he returned to the ring in 2010, Margarito was no longer the same fighter. The suspension had taken its toll on him both physically and mentally. The bout with Shane Mosley, a chance to reassert himself as a contender, became the ultimate reminder of how far he'd fallen. Mosley dominated the fight, knocking Margarito out in the 9th round. It wasn't just a loss, it was a humiliation. Margarito's once legendary toughness had failed him, and the world was no longer watching the Tijuana tornado with the same admiration. Fans who once cheered him on now questioned his entire career. The scandal left a permanent scar, one that could not be erased by any victory in the ring. The media, once enamored with his charisma and power, turned on him. Journalists who had praised his determination now dissected his past with a critical eye. It was no longer about the fights, it was about the man behind the gloves. Margarito struggled to come to terms with the reality of what had happened. Despite the legal battles and public shaming, he insisted on continuing his career, believing that time would heal the wounds. However, he found that redemption was elusive, and each new loss only deepened his sense of isolation. His once boisterous personality became overshadowed by doubt and regret. In 2011, Antonio Margarito made his attempt at redemption when he faced Miguel Cotto in a highly anticipated rematch. This was the fight that many thought could restore his credibility, but it ended up being another painful chapter in his tragic fall. Margarito, who had once been a fierce competitor with a legendary chin and an unwavering spirit, was no longer the same fighter. The toll of his career, both physical and emotional, was evident. Cotto, who had suffered at the hands of Margarito in their first fight, was now a fighter with revenge on his mind, and he made sure to deliver a devastating beating to Margarito. As the rounds wore on, it became clear that Margarito was outmatched. His punches no longer had the same power. His footwork was slower, and his stamina had deteriorated. By the end of the fight, Margarito's face was badly swollen, and his body showed signs of the damage he had endured. The fight was stopped by the doctor after the 10th round, and Margarito was declared unable to continue. The defeat was not just a loss. It was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. His body had given out. His will was no longer enough, and his reputation was forever altered. The defeat to Cotto marked the end of Margarito's time as a major force in the sport. He would go on to fight once more, but the fire and intensity that had once defined him were gone. The man who had once been a feared welterweight champion, known for his unrelenting pressure and brutal style, was now a shadow of his former self. The scandal, the injuries, and the losses had taken a toll that no victory could reverse. He had tried to come back, but it was clear to everyone that Margarito's best days were behind him. The physical toll of boxing is often more than just cuts and bruises. It's the lasting damage that accumulates over time, the wear and tear that can alter the course of a fighter's life. Antonio Margarito's body, once a symbol of strength and resilience, had begun to show signs of the damage that had been done over the years. His hands, injured from the brutal years of fighting, were no longer reliable, and his body had been ravaged by the years of absorbing punishment. More than just physical injuries, the mental toll of boxing began to take its toll on Margarito. In the ring, he had always been known for his grit and determination, but outside of it, the weight of his past began to overwhelm him. The public perception of him had shifted dramatically, and the scandal had turned him from a hero to a pariah in the eyes of many. The pressure of trying to regain his status and repair his reputation was constant. As Margarito continued to fight, his mental health became a growing concern. Sources close to him reported that he was increasingly withdrawn and depressed, struggling with the emotional aftermath of his fall from grace. The loneliness he felt was compounded by his inability to escape the shadow of his past mistakes. Fans who had once adored him now turned their backs, and former allies distanced themselves. Margarito began to spiral, and his mental state worsened with each passing year. He began to feel like a man trapped in his own legacy, unable to escape the reputation he had built through both his success and his scandal. Those who had once celebrated his victories now watched as he battled not just opponents, but the demons of his own making. Margarito's decline wasn't just about losing in the ring. It was about the psychological toll of realizing that the future he had once dreamed of had slipped away, replaced by regret and the unbearable weight of his past decision. His journey, once filled with promise, had become a cautionary tale of how quickly everything can be lost, and how much harder it is to reclaim what was once taken for granted. Antonio Margarito's downfall wasn't confined to the ring. His financial struggles became a key component of his tragic lifestyle. The boxer who had once made millions in the prime of his career was now living a starkly different reality. Despite his significant earnings, Margarito's financial decisions left him vulnerable in the years following his rise to stardom. His lavish lifestyle, built on the success of his boxing career, quickly turned into a financial burden once his peak earnings began to dwindle. Margarito, known for his extravagant spending on luxury cars, expensive jewelry, and high-end living, found himself in a tight financial bind as his boxing career declined. In the years following his loss to Cotto and the fallout from the glove scandal, Margarito's financial situation took a nosedive. Legal documents revealed that he had spent tens of millions of dollars during his time in the limelight. But now, with his career winding down, he faced mounting debts and unpaid obligation. In 2020, Margarito admitted to having less than $20 in his bank account. His lawyers stated that the boxer had burned through most of his fortune on a combination of indulgences, luxury items, an entourage, and gambling. When the money ran out, so did the people who had surrounded him. Margarito's financial troubles were compounded by a series of lawsuits. He was sued by jewelers for unpaid bills related to custom watches and jewelry, and hotel chains took him to court over unpaid stays and property damage. His once grand lifestyle, complete with mansions, private jets, and flashy entourages, had evaporated. Margarito's financial troubles only grew worse when he was hit with child support arrears and faced foreclosure on several properties. His inability to manage his finances and the loss of his income meant that he could no longer afford the trappings of fame that once defined him. At one point, Margarito admitted to not being able to pay a $600,000 civil judgment. This was a far cry from the fighter who had once earned 7 figures per fight. As the once glamorous life began to fade, Margarito struggled to maintain appearances. He posted photos of himself with cash, luxury cars, and expensive outfits. But insiders revealed that much of this was a facade. He had become a man trying desperately to keep up an image that no longer reflected his reality. Antonio Margarito's personal life has been equally as turbulent as his boxing career. His family, who had once been a source of strength and support, was forced to witness his fall from grace. Margarito's relationships were strained in the wake of his boxing career and the scandal that followed. Despite his early rise to success, his personal life was always overshadowed by the demands of his career and the lifestyle that came with it. The pressures of being a public figure and the toll of constant travel and training created distance between him and his loved ones. Margarito's marriage was one of the relationships most impacted by his boxing career and the aftermath of the scandal. While his wife, who had stood by him through thick and thin, remained supportive, their relationship endured challenges as he faced personal and professional struggle. Sources close to Margarito revealed that the emotional toll of his failures in the ring and the public shame he experienced began to erode the foundation of his family life. Their marriage became strained, with Margarito becoming increasingly withdrawn and distant. Margarito's relationship with his children also began to deteriorate. Once a father who proudly provided for his family, he now found himself missing important moments in their lives due to his inability to balance personal issues with his responsibilities as a father. He was often absent from birthdays, school events, and other milestones. As Margarito's career and financial woes worsened, so did his ability to maintain his role as a provider and a stable father figure. His family was forced to watch him unravel, both in the public eye and behind closed doors. The boxer's struggles with mental health became more apparent in his personal life. Those closest to him reported that Margarito became increasingly paranoid, angry, and erratic. He was often described as a man trapped by his own decisions, unable to break free from the turmoil that had consumed him. Despite the loving support of his family, Margarito seemed isolated, consumed by the regret of his past actions and the uncertainty of his future. Antonio? Margarito's legacy is undeniably complicated. Once celebrated as a ruthless and durable champion, his name is now forever associated with controversy and scandal. His boxing career, which once promised greatness, became a cautionary tale for future generations of fighters. Margarito's story serves as a harsh reminder that fame and fortune in boxing are fleeting, and a single mistake can tarnish a lifetime of hard work. While his rise was meteoric, his fall was just as dramatic, marked by the infamous hand-wrapped scandal that ultimately ruined his career and left a permanent stain on his reputation. However, despite the tarnish on his legacy, there remains a part of Margarito that still longs for redemption. He tried to make a comeback, signing deals with various promoters and training for a return to the ring, but each attempt seemed to fizzle out. The fighter who once had everything, glory, fame, money, was now fighting an internal battle to reclaim some semblance of respect and dignity in a sport that had turned its back on him. His health and financial struggles weighed heavily on him, and the redemption he sought became increasingly elusive. In 2023, footage surfaced of Margarito's shadow boxing alone in a gym, his movements slow and devoid of the intensity that once made him a feared competitor. This was no longer the Tijuana tornado who dominated opponents in the ring. Instead, he was a man trying to hold on to the past, searching for a reason to keep fighting, even if it wasn't in the ring. For the first time, he looked like a man trapped by the legacy of his own mistakes, not a fighter poised for a comeback. In the end, Antonio Margarito's story isn't just about the fights he won or lost. It's about a man who couldn't escape the consequences of his actions. His potential was undeniable, but his lack of discipline and poor decision-making led to the unraveling of a career and a life that could have been so much more. While Margarito may never fully recover from the mistakes of his past, his story stands as a stark reminder that redemption isn't always possible, and even the greatest fighters can fall when they lose sight of who they are.